I am a feminist. Whether that's activism or not, that just is what makes sense to me. These are just stories that feel interesting to me as an actor. I just find the characters interesting, the world's interesting, and it's something that I want to explore.
Disney just shattered Hollywood's unwritten rules with a jaw-dropping move that has the entire industry stunned. Emma Stone is officially taking over as Snow White in a completely new live-action remake. What makes this insane? They're basically erasing the Rachel Zegler version that became one of Disney's biggest disasters in years. This never happens in Hollywood, and it shows just how desperate Disney is to fix one of their most valuable franchises. Today, I'm diving into the Snow White drama that's shaking up Hollywood. So what went wrong with the first attempt? The Rachel Zegler Snow White was supposed to be Disney's next big hit, modernizing the classic 1937 fairy tale for today's audiences. But instead, it became a total train wreck. Theaters were practically empty. The film bombed at the box office, and Disney executives were panicking behind closed doors.
That at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Industry insiders are saying it was one of the worst performances for a major Disney release in recent memory, especially considering how much money they poured into marketing the film worldwide. When a company as powerful as Disney can't even get people into seats for one of their most recognizable princesses, you know something went terribly wrong. But here's where it gets crazy. The movie's failure wasn't just about the film itself. The whole disaster started when Rachel Zegler's interviews went viral for all the wrong reasons. Her comments about changing Snow White's story completely, criticizing the original film, and dismissing classic elements that fans loved created a massive backlash online. Social media exploded with fans feeling disrespected and angry about how the remake was handling a beloved classic.
Every single white male is a piece of shit, and the woman is the hero, and all authority is bad, and all business is bad, but government is good as social. And most people don't know what they're watching. She, unfortunately, sort of pulled the curtain back, and people knew exactly what was going on.
The situation spiraled so far out of control that Disney's PR team couldn't contain the damage. What should have been standard promotional interviews turned into a full-blown crisis that overshadowed the actual movie. It gets worse. Critics who actually saw the film weren't impressed either. Many complained that the remake took everything magical about Snow White and made it boring and unrealistic. The film quickly became the center of heated debates about Hollywood remakes and whether studios were losing touch with what audiences actually want. Even people who typically defend Disney's creative choices couldn't find much to praise. When both die-hard fans and casual moviegoers are united in disappointment, you've got a serious problem on your hands. Here's the shocking part. This was supposed to be a guaranteed moneymaker. Disney had allocated a massive budget, reportedly close to $200 million when you factor in marketing costs. The studio expected it to launch a new franchise with potential sequels, theme park attractions, and merchandise. Instead, they got a public relations nightmare and a financial disaster that executives are still trying to explain to shareholders. Some financial analysts are estimating the losses could reach 9 figures, the kind of financial hit that gets people fired and entire strategies questioned. You won't believe what Disney did next. Instead of just accepting the failure and moving on like most studios would, they made an unprecedented decision. Completely start over with a new star and creative team. By casting Emma Stone, who previously knocked it out of the park as Cruella for Disney.
Yes, Toolman.
Yeah, I have a clip of it.
Oh, okay, great.
Her being a retard.
Okay.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That laugh.
That is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can.
They're desperately trying to distance themselves from the Zegler disaster and convince audiences to give Snow White another chance. It's like watching someone crash a brand new car, then immediately go buy the exact same model hoping for a different outcome. The level of panic this reveals inside Disney headquarters is almost unbelievable. Think about how insane this is. Disney is basically admitting they completely messed up the first time around. One Hollywood insider called it the cinematic equivalent of a product recall, something you only do when a product is so broken it can't be fixed. For a giant company like Disney to essentially say, "We were wrong, let's try again," shows just how badly they need to protect the Snow White brand. This kind of public admission of failure is almost unheard of from a major studio, especially one as image-conscious as Disney. But that's not all. Behind the scenes, Disney has assembled an entirely new creative team with a fresh director, and even brought in consultants who specialize in Snow White folklore and Disney history. They're reportedly going through the original 1937 film frame by frame, analyzing what made it work and where the Zegler version went wrong. The company has even reached out to focus groups of longtime Disney fans to understand what elements of Snow White are considered untouchable. When a studio goes to these lengths, it reveals just how deeply they fear they've damaged their own legacy. And here's why it matters so much. The 1937 Snow White wasn't just any Disney movie. It was literally the first full-length animated feature film that built the entire Disney empire.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad.
Without Snow White's success, there would be no Disney as we know it today. No Magic Kingdom, no Mickey Mouse Empire, nothing. Damaging this particular story strikes at the very heart of Disney's identity and history. It's like watching someone accidentally damage a family heirloom and then frantically trying to repair it before anyone notices. The challenge facing Emma Stone is absolutely massive. She somehow needs to make people forget about the controversy while creating a Snow White that both honors the original and feels fresh for today's audiences. Disney's marketing team will avoid mentioning the Zegler version at all costs, instead focusing on how Stone's portrayal returns to the magic of the classic fairy tale. They're already carefully crafting a narrative that this is the definitive live-action Snow White, hoping audiences will simply forget the previous attempt ever happened. It's a high-wire act with absolutely no safety net. But listen to this. Inside sources say Emma Stone is approaching the role with extreme caution. She reportedly asked to personally view the original film multiple times and requested meetings with Disney historians to understand Snow White's cultural significance. Unlike the previous approach, Stone is said to be emphasizing the importance of honoring what audiences loved about the character while finding subtle ways to make it her own. This approach reveals just how much Disney has learned from the backlash. The focus has shifted from reinventing Snow White to celebrating her. The biggest question in Hollywood right now is whether audiences will even give Disney a second chance. Many viewers felt betrayed by the first attempt and may not be willing to shell out money for tickets no matter who's playing Snow White.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
The right to buy
reproductive
Cosby
rights.
sweaters?
Come on.
That's the face
Go
of a
vote blue.
serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
Disney is gambling that Emma Stone's star power and a more faithful approach to the story will be enough to win back fans' trust. Industry analysts are divided on whether this strategy can work. Some believe the damage is already done, while others point to Disney's remarkable ability to bounce back from failures in the past. What's making this reboot even more challenging is the toxic environment that now surrounds the Snow White property. The first attempt became a battleground in ongoing culture wars, with people on both sides using the film to push broader political arguments. Emma Stone's version will need to somehow avoid these landmines entirely, while still appealing to modern sensibilities. It's like trying to walk through a minefield while juggling. One wrong step, and the whole thing explodes all over again. One of the most controversial elements of the Zegler version was how it handled the Seven Dwarfs. Reports suggest the new version will bring them back in a way that's much closer to what fans remember and love, possibly casting comedic actors to bring their unique personalities to life. This alone shows how Disney is scrambling to address everything that went wrong the first time around. The company is walking an incredibly fine line between respecting the original characters and addressing legitimate concerns about representation. How they handle this particular aspect will be under intense scrutiny from all sides. The situation gets even more complicated when you look at the money involved. Disney is essentially paying twice to make a single movie, absorbing the massive costs of the failed version and now funding an entirely new production. Financial analysts are shocked by this move, speculating that CEO Bob Iger himself must have approved this extraordinary expense after deciding that the damage to Disney's reputation would cost even more in the long run. When you're willing to write off hundreds of millions of dollars to try again, it reveals just how valuable the Snow White property is to Disney's long-term business strategy. And here's what makes this truly unprecedented. Disney rarely abandons projects entirely. Even their biggest flops usually get relegated to Disney Plus or repackaged for international markets. The decision to completely start over signals that executives believe the Zegler version was so fundamentally flawed that it couldn't be salvaged through re-editing or marketing tricks. This is the entertainment equivalent of a surgeon deciding amputation is the only option. Drastic, expensive, and a last resort when everything else has failed.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
So we didn't do that this time.
What's really fascinating about this whole mess is how it exposes the growing gap between what critics praise and what regular audiences actually want to see. While many professional reviewers liked the modern approach of the Zegler version, everyday moviegoers just wanted to experience the magic and wonder of the Snow White story they grew up with. Stone's version will somehow need to bridge this gap to succeed. This disconnect between critics and audiences has been growing for years, but the Snow White disaster brought it into sharp focus like never before. The stakes couldn't be higher for Disney right now. For years, they've been turning their animated classics into live-action goldmines. Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, Aladdin, but the formula doesn't always work. The Snow White disaster could force them to completely rethink their approach to these remakes, potentially changing their entire strategy for the future. Some industry analysts are suggesting this could mark the beginning of the end for Disney's live-action remake era, especially if the Stone version also underperforms. It gets even more interesting when you look at social media reactions. Since the Emma Stone announcement, fans have been split. Some celebrating what they see as Disney correcting course, others accusing the company of caving to online pressure. But here's the truth. In Hollywood, decisions like this almost always come down to money. When a film bombs and generates negative publicity, studios will do whatever it takes to protect their investment. The online debates are just noise compared to the financial realities driving Disney's decision-making behind closed doors. The reason this is happening now is because Disney faces more challenges than ever before. The streaming wars have completely transformed how success is measured in Hollywood. They're desperately trying to balance theatrical releases with content for their streaming service, Disney Plus. The pandemic changed viewing habits, competition is fiercer than ever, and audience attention is increasingly fragmented. The Zegler Snow White represented the worst possible outcome. Too controversial for theaters and not special enough to drive streaming subscriptions. The Stone version has to solve both problems at once in a media landscape that's more competitive than ever.
But the primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
Here's something few people are talking about. This controversy has revealed deep divisions within Disney itself. Inside sources claim there were heated arguments between different factions of the company during the development of the Zegler version. Some executives pushed for a more traditional approach, while others advocated for a complete reinvention. The film's failure has reportedly strengthened the position of traditionalists within the company, who are now pointing to the backlash as evidence that dramatic departures from beloved classics carry too much risk. This internal power struggle could shape Disney's creative direction for years to come. For Disney diehards, this second chance brings both excitement and anxiety. Will Emma Stone nail the classic songs? Will the story keep the heart and soul of the original fairy tale? Can Disney recapture the magic that made the 1937 film a masterpiece? After such a high-profile disappointment, expectations couldn't be higher, and the room for error couldn't be smaller. The pressure on everyone involved is immense, especially knowing that another failure could permanently damage one of Disney's most precious characters. What makes this situation even more awkward is thinking about all the talented artists who worked on the Zegler version. Imagine pouring your heart into costumes, sets, and special effects, only to have the studio basically say, "Yeah, we're starting completely over." This kind of public rejection rarely happens in Hollywood and raises questions about whether anything from the original production will survive in the new version. Some costume designers and visual effects artists reportedly spent years developing their contributions, only to see their work essentially erased from Disney's history. The timing couldn't be worse for Disney either. The company is already facing criticism for other recent disappointments and controversy surrounding their approach to storytelling. The Snow White disaster comes at a moment when many are questioning Disney's creative direction across multiple franchises. Each failure adds to a narrative that the once invincible studio has lost its magic touch. The pressure to get this right goes beyond just one movie. It's about proving Disney still knows how to connect with audiences in a meaningful way. At its core, the Snow White saga reveals the fundamental challenge facing all entertainment companies today. How do you update beloved classics for modern audiences without losing what made them special in the first place? The Zegler version clearly pushed too far in one direction, putting modern messaging ahead of the fairy tale magic that viewers expected. Now, Emma Stone and the new creative team face the nearly impossible task of finding the perfect balance. It's a question that goes beyond just Snow White. It gets to the heart of how we preserve and reimagine cultural touchstones for new generations. What happens next could reshape Disney's future for years to come. If Stone's Snow White succeeds, it could reinforce Disney's belief that their classic stories can be endlessly reinvented with the right approach. But if it fails again after such an expensive do-over, it might signal that some beloved tales should be left alone rather than repeatedly reimagined. For a company built on fairy tale magic, the answer to that question will determine whether they get their happily ever after or face a third devastating blow to one of their most precious stories. So what do you guys think? Will Emma Stone save Snow White, or is Disney digging themselves into an even deeper hole? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and smash that like to catch all my latest videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.